Welcome in, folks, to another special quarantined coronavirus edition of I've Got a Theory with Henish. I've got a great guest on today, Eran Sinai. We did a radio show together for over a year here in San Diego on the ESPN network, and I'm excited to have him on as a guest on my show. Eran, welcome to I've Got a Theory.
Thank you. Thanks. Good to be with you on the same line again, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, and so we had a good rapport as co-hosts of that show, where you had one angle on stuff and I would often have another. So I'm interested to hear what your theory is today that we can chat about for a few minutes.
By the way, talking about the show, yesterday I was going back to a couple of the shows, and almost every show I clicked to listen from the old podcast, it was you hosting, and you were saying, well, Eran is not here today, so it's going to be Henish here. It's like all my shows. So it was all the show I was able to listen to where you were the host. So
yeah, that's funny.
Really
there was
funny.
A lot of times where you were traveling, and I was happy to fill in and keep things moving.
Yeah, it was awesome. But, being that we find ourselves in quarantine and going nuts, some of us, and so thinking about that, first of all, I got to tell you, my hobby, by the way, my hobby about making cocktails, right? I have my own barrels and I age cocktails, right?
Oh, you even create them. You're not just pouring drinks together. I didn't know you're actually like distilling drinks.
Yeah, so I take the cocktails and put them together and age them in barrels. So I came up, that's not what I was going to talk about, but I just thought about it. I came up with a cocktail that's called Quarantini.
Yep. Nice. What's in
I'm
it?
sure I'm not the first one, but so basically what you do, you get in a shaker, you put in a shaker ice, then you put, let's say it's 2-to-1, so 2 shots of bourbon. Depends what kind of bourbon you like. I use Angel Envy or whatever.
Yeah.
And then 1 shot of Saint Germain.
Okay.
You shake it real well. Okay. You pour it, you strain it into a martini glass. Then you float it with bitters.
Okay.
You know how you float? You turn the spoon upside down.
Pour it on some Angostura bitters. Yeah.
That's right. Then you take an orange peel, go around the rim of the glass for a little bit, take a Luxardo cherry, put the orange peel on one side onto the toothpick, and then put the cherry on top and fold the orange peel on top of that. Put it in your glass, and you got yourself a quarantine. It's an amazing flavor. So.
Yeah, that sounds good. I've been doing quarantine poker on Friday nights with my buddies. So I might have to run to the store and pick up some of those ingredients, because that sounds great.
So, so talking about that, I'm thinking, okay, so people sit at home, you sit with your family, or how much do you really have to say? So then I figured out that one of the ways to spark a conversation is to ask weird questions. And when you talk to people on the phone and you keep in touch with your friend, there's so much you can say. So how about asking weird questions? I think asking weird questions shows that you are creative. You don't mind being silly, and you can be yourself about it. You can be confident, and people will probably respond, and they'll probably like you more. Even now when you sit with people you try to talk to, new companies, new suppliers, new customers, there's nothing wrong with asking one of those questions. And what I really I thought about it, and I think it's very important to know that there's a difference though between being random and being weird. Okay? I think that you can be weird with a buddy. You can be weird with your best friend.
Right.
I'm sorry, you can be random with your best friend, right?
Sure.
You can ask a random question of your best friend because they know you. You can't do that with somebody you don't know. So you got to be really careful and distinguish between being weird and being random. Now, being weird is, again, being yourself, doing with tact. And let's say, one of the questions that you can say, okay, let's say you discover, there's so many of them. Let's say you accidentally eat something radioactive, right? And radioactive vegetable. They were good, and what's even cooler about that, that they endow you with this superpower of your choice, right?
Okay.
What's it going to be?
Yeah.
You know?
That's so fun stuff like that. So have you done this on
Yeah,
calls,
yeah.
conversations? Is that one of the ones you've used?
Yeah, I use that, and I actually started with another. I was talking to a company, and I was talking to the legal counsel, and they're very pragmatic. They go straight to the point, and you can really you want to break the ice. I said, let me ask you a question. I said, can I ask you a question? And he said, sure. I said, let's say you discover this beautiful island. It's quarantine now, and you got into this beautiful island, and you get to build your own society, right? He said, yeah. I said, now remember, you're an attorney. Now you are the one to make the rules. He said, yeah. And I said, what's the first rule you're going to put into place?
Yeah. What do you say?
He said, then first he said, there is no law. I said, no, you're not going to do that, is there? He said, no, probably not. It's probably, he said, my first thing is going to be, the first rule is that I got to veto everything else that goes around. Then I'll take it
Veto?
from there.
Yeah. Any new rule that comes up that he gets the veto power?
That's exactly right.
That's what he wanted, huh? He just wants to say no to stuff. He doesn't want to say yes to other things.
That's exactly right. That's
right.
exactly
So just
right.
take that off their plate. It's interesting. So what have you found as the result of being able to have a conversation like that that's more non-scripted, not on the agenda?
I think first of all, it's an icebreaker. It's an amazing icebreaker. And
Yeah.
it gets people to their frame of mind of, okay, yeah, I know we're quarantined. I know we're home. But, we don't have to be that sophisticated or that rigid. I've learned once that as a man, again, I'm talking about men. I don't know about women, but as a man needs to be. I've learned that needs to be three-dimensional, right?
What needs to be three-dimensional?
A man, just a
Okay,
man. A
in
man
general.
needs to be
Okay.
three-dimensional, right? And I was taught and learned that the first dimension, so it's between Clint, Curly, and Gandhi,
Okay.
right?
Clint
So if you
Eastwood,
take
Curly, the Three Stooge, and obviously the one
and
and only
Gandhi,
Gandhi.
right? That's exactly right. So you take Clint. Clint is it's a very yes and no. He cares less than people love him. He cares more about the respect. He's very black and white. It's a yes and a no. So
Okay.
man cannot be, I don't know, I'm not sure. You gotta have a Clint, right? But you can't only be Clint. You gotta have a little bit of Curly. You gotta
Okay.
be able to be silly, have a sense of humor, and just have some fun. But you can only be Curly. It just wouldn't work, right? So you have to have a little bit of Gandhi. And when I say Gandhi, I mean a higher purpose. It doesn't matter, in my opinion, what you believe in, as long as it's bigger than yourself, right? So if you look at Clint,
Yeah.
Clint doesn't have a Curly, nor does he have Gandhi, right? Look at Curly, he doesn't have Gandhi, and he doesn't have Clint. And if you look at Gandhi, he doesn't have the other two. So if you take these three together, I think that helps. And I think being that we sit at home, we obviously with our families, so it takes a lot because it's more than ourselves. We give a lot, right?
Right.
We really being unselfish and helping and doing everything and really being with the kids or the family or whatnot, right?
Right.
And as far as then you go right into work and you have the stress from home and you go right into work and you jump into contract or deals and you're so serious. And then I think we forget to laugh.
Yeah.
That's what I've been seeing. And I jump on calls with people. People are so under pressure these days and are so in their heads. So we got to do something to let us, as far as a man, to help me get out of my head, because we
Yeah.
men tend to get into our own heads.
That's true. That's an interesting point because I was saying to someone, I probably during this quarantine time that we were kind of self-distancing, social distancing, I probably connect and contact 3 times as many people as I did before when I was out and about driving around and doing in-person meetings. And it's partially I saved the time on the transportation, but partially I'm now having no problem contacting people that I might not have even heard from in 5 or 10 years and just reaching back out. And our connection ratio is pretty high. But I also know that every day that I have at least 2 or 3 things that I'm thinking about that I could share as anecdotal to get someone to lower their guard, loosen up, and tell me something that's going on personally as well. It might not be a random or weird question, but it might be something off the wall that I thought of this morning,
Like what?
or that, like what? Yeah. So for example, I was chatting with someone this morning and I was saying, how have you ever thought about what would have happened with the evolutionary timeline of the Earth if the dinosaurs didn't get extinct 65 million years ago?
Mm.
If the asteroid didn't kill anyone, would have some animal or some dinosaur evolved to the point to be intelligent, technology creating species?
Mm.
Right? But I think things like this, and that's why I have a show called I've Got a Theory, because I like to think of weird things like this. But that's a weird question, right? I mean, so it's like, so I asked, the person I was on the phone with, he's like, oh man, I've never even considered that. But,
Yeah.
but then it begs the question, like, are there alien planets where dinosaurs did evolve and didn't get extinct, and now there's intelligent alien dinosaurs?
Well, let's think about it. What do you think about it? Do you think they're aliens or there are other planets that live on them that we don't know?
It's interesting. You need kind of like an evolutionary scientist, but the thing is, we don't know what we don't know. So what's to say that intelligent life anywhere else in the universe would take on a humanoid mammal type form, right? Could you have water-based intelligent life? Could you have air-based bird type intelligent life, right? So it begs all these questions. Like it seems unreasonable to have insects or bug type creatures become intelligent, even though as a collective colony they could become very intelligent at what they do, right? But it seems like you need kind of like a heart pumping larger organism at least half our size or bigger, to have the brain power to be able to think of tool use and intelligence and leverage and all the other
Why
discoveries
though?
that we've made.
But why? That's the only thing you know of,
Yeah,
about. What if there's another form that it doesn't involve heart or brain? I don't even know and can fathom and think about what it would be like, but who knows? I mean, if
well
intelligence is
here's what it is, right? I mean, and this is what they've been able to prove, is that when we have challenging times, when a species has challenging times, they either evolve to adapt or they fade away, right? So if you evolve to adapt, that forces your brain to get a little bit bigger, right? And that forces that evolutionary selection to choose the smarter partners that were able to survive, right? And so when you look at the evolution of humans, the theory is that
Mhm.
20 plus thousand years ago, when there was big climate change in the Middle East, or in the cradle of humanity, where they say humans came from, is what caused humans to go from hunter-gatherers to farmers, because they figured out that they could do some farming, that the plants and the seeds they dropped were growing, and that they could take plants from that again. So it caused a big shift from people roaming across big swaths of land and just finding food, to saying, let's settle here and plant food.
Mhm.
And that caused them
Right.
to get a lot smarter too, because they're like, okay, now we've got specialization of skills, right? We can have a person that just focuses on finding food. We can have a person that just focuses on building houses or cooking the food or defending or whatever they did to specialize and continue to evolve and grow to what we've become now, right? But some experts say that if it wasn't for that climate change that forced us to think creatively of a better solution, we might still be hanging out in trees and running around chasing animals, day by day to survive.
Yeah, it is interesting. But when you think about how many planets are there that we can't even see and don't know they exist, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know what kind of form of other lives. I know the evolution of what happened on Earth,
Right.
right? But I don't know if is there such thing as evolution in somewhere else. Maybe it was totally something else created. I don't even know what the concept would be.
Yeah, and the theory is that there could be life that isn't based on carbon, right? We're carbon-based
Hmm.
life forms. There could be life
Right.
that doesn't breathe oxygen, or as plants do, they don't breathe carbon, right? They could
Hmm.
be breathing nitrogen or hydrogen or some other
Yeah.
random gas, and
Right.
completely take on a completely different molecular basis than
Right.
humans and earthlings do, right? Because all all plants and life, were somewhat related because we kind of all evolved from the same thing. So the same rudimentary system. So yeah, it's possible that elsewhere in the universe, it could be completely different. But yeah, these are the kind of random things I think of. But I think it goes back to your original theory that, especially now when we're having these conversations, instead of sticking strict to the agenda, it's nice to go off topic and get a little personality into your conversation, barring that you have time. I know I was on the phone right before our meeting started here for this, and the guy was ready to talk my ear off, and I was like, I've got about 2 minutes. Let's wrap it up, and I'll call you back later. We could chat a little bit longer, So, and I find myself, no offense to anyone I've done this to, but if a conversation's going on too long, I'm like, I'm sorry, I've got to prep for my 12:25 call.
I do the same thing. You're not alone. You're not alone. But I remember a while back, 2 years ago, I had a client that had an identity theft. Now, the funny thing was that he's a military guy, and someone lives few blocks away from him with the same name, used his identity and bought a Harley Davidson, right?
Oh, wow.
And there was a problem that Harley wouldn't let him off the hook, our client, right?
Wow.
So ended up with a call with the legal counsel of Harley Davidson, right? And I always use the approach of trying to break the ice. So the guy got on the call and was very, I have to tell you, this call may be recorded. You know how they do it, right?
Debt collection, right? Yeah.
Yeah, blah. And he's the legal counsel for Harley Davidson, so he's a big shot, whatever. And then he reads me the disclaimer, and he said, "So, calling about client, blah blah blah. What can I help you with?" So I said, "Let me ask you a question." He said, "Yeah." I said, "Do you ride a Harley too?" And
Yeah.
and that was really an icebreaker.
What did he say? Does he ride?
He stopped for a second. He said, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, I do." I said, "What do you ride?" And then he told me, I think it was Softail. I think he mentioned even.
Right.
And then we started talking about my experience riding bike and his experience riding bike. And the conversation was about 20 minutes, literally onto bikes.
Yeah.
And then we're like, all right, well, yeah. So back to blah, blah, blah. And he was smooth as anything, the best thing can go. And I think we need to remember that, we just have to be who we are.
Right.
You don't have to pretend anyone else.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't have to put up a big front about how great you are or how powerful you are. Meanwhile, that 20 minutes cost Harley Davidson about $350, right?
Yeah, probably. Probably. And but I'm saying, when you try to be someone else, people really see through your kind of fake personality, right? And they could recognize you're not being genuine.
True.
So it's kind of, I want to always say to people, how can they trust you if you are pretending to be someone you're not?
Right. No, I totally agree. One of the things that I've had this conversation with potential guests, because, as you know, if we ask someone to come on our show and talk about the market or talk about their business or talk about their profession, that's easier for most people than when instead of me putting them on a spot for something like this, I'm like, let's talk about something more eccentric or unique or out of the ordinary, just to expand thinking and get our listeners to think of something and have that response that I love. I've never thought of that before, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people feel they're more afraid to do something like that. They're like, oh, well, I try to be really politically correct. I'm like, you don't have to step on any toes. And with this show, the purpose isn't to say necessarily that you believe wholeheartedly in a theory. It's also to say, hey, I've heard of this theory and I think it's worth discussing, right? And I think it's important that people, regardless of how politically correct you are or what you believe in, that you have conversations on any and every topic if it's worth talking about, right? Okay. And I have, important conversations with people, whether it's politics, whether it's religion, whether it's gender issues or equality. And I love having those conversations, and I love playing devil's advocate on either side, just to make sure that we cover all aspects and all angles of a conversation. So you realize there's more than just one voice in any argument, in any conversation, in any discussion.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's really important. And I know in your business, you talk to so many people, and it's, it could be buyers, it could be sellers, it could be even your construction crew. And I think, it's how you create the relationship. It's how you build a relationship, and that's what really counts.
Right.
When
No, and the relationship is super key. I totally 100% agree. I was visiting some properties today and ran into one of my guys, putting together light switches at the house. And I remember that he was really felt a lot warmer after our Christmas party, after I spent some time talking to him. He's like, oh, it's awesome working at this company, knowing that there's regular guys that work here. I'm not just working from some corporate behemoth, like you're a guy, you have a family, you have interests. And I'm like, yeah, same with you. We're all basically the same once you dig down. You don't even have to dig that deep. You can just peel off my one layer of Cal Home Co. shirt and I'm just a regular guy like anyone else with interests that has ridden motorcycles, that likes to talk about dinosaurs, whatever. Being able to have that question, I think creates that bond that, okay, cool, we've got something in common. We're not necessarily adversaries on everything.
I agree. And I think as long as when you talk to someone, you offer them a chance for a reasonable response, right? Then that can you can engage into a meaningful conversation, regardless.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the most important key here, to just leave room for conversation.
Yeah, it's a great theory. I like that, Eran. I mean, we'll kind of wrap it up with that, because I think that's a great takeaway for everyone, which is if you're having conversations with people, if you're connecting, if you're doing Zoom video calls, or if you've got scheduled calls with someone, especially if it's someone you don't know, spend a few minutes to ask a random question, not necessarily weird, right? Ask a random question just to break the ice. And you could get these from books. I'm sure you could just look online and say random questions for icebreakers. And
random weird questions, and absolutely.
There's thousands of them. Well, Ron, thank you for spending some time with me and sharing your theory to ask some random questions. We'll wrap it up with this great episode of I've Got a Theory with Henish Pulkal. Thank you to my guest, Eran Sinai, for joining us. Please like, comment, and subscribe to our show, and stay tuned for our next episodes.